So the theme of this year's camp was be. That's what we learned about the entire week. We learned about what it meant to be as a Christian. The first night that we got to camp, we went to worship, and the speaker that night was talking about being in community and what that looked like and what that meant, and some of the barriers that might be in our way of actually living in community. And it's something that we saw play out through the rest of the week. It was a wonderful note to start on, because everything for the rest of the week was kind of filtered through, are we being in community? Are there walls up in my own life that are preventing me from being able to serve beside my brothers and sisters and be able to have those relationships that I so desperately need? The second night, we learned about being in motion. Being in motion was probably the easiest part of the week, as we never stopped going. We were constantly either on the work site, doing projects, working on 3 different houses this year, which was an amazing testament to the group that went last year, because all the rest of the groups had the norm. They all had one house or one project that they worked on for the whole week, whereas our group, they gave us, part of a street and said, here are the 3 widows on this street, and here's all the work that they need done on their houses. And the kids just tackled it, and we just went after it. And so the being in motion part was probably the most obvious part of the week. Just continuing to strive after God in all of our actions and everything we did. The third night, Wednesday, we talked about being in Christ. And that night we talked about John 15, where it talks about Jesus being the vine and us being the branches. And the entire night, what was going through my mind was something that happened on the work site throughout the week, which was the house that I was working at. One of the things we had to do was we had to take this gnarled ivy off of the woman's fence, and this fence went all the way around the perimeter of her property, and 2 of the 4 sides of this fence were just completely overgrown. I mean, you couldn't see that there was a fence there, and it took us about a day and a half of multiple people working on this on and off before we could just get the basic ivy off. And then what was left was this root in this one corner of the property, and it was seriously a tree that had grown up through this fence. And when we were talking that night about being in Christ, one of the things that I saw was just that root, and that representing Christ, and us being these branches and these vines, coming off of this root. And when I was thinking about that, I'm like, gosh, those pesky branches were so stubborn. They would not move. They would not come off. We would have to twist them and untie them and try to pull them off, but they were so stubborn. And that night, I just was talking to God. I'm just going, God, is that what kind of branch I am? That it's not only that apart from you I can do nothing, but am I being the stubborn branch that won't grow where you want me to grow, that won't go in the direction? Are we that frustrating that we're like this vine that's entwined ourselves in a fence that won't ever let go? And then on the last night, we talked about being the solution, and the challenge that was given was that what would happen if the leader of the camp called us 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and said, what's different? What's still happening because of coming to a missions camp? Or does everything look just the same? And just really challenged us with that idea of, not letting things stop for 1 week a year, because that's not what it's about. It's about living for Christ. It's about actually doing things with our daily life. And so that night, one of the things we got to do is we all left the worship center and we walked out into the back, parking lot, and they had all of these paper lanterns, these big paper lanterns that we lit from the bottom, and then we all let them go one by one, and there was these huge just lights, and it was a really stormy night, and everything was overcast, and so you couldn't see any stars, and there was really nothing else going on. And we just watched as all these lanterns just filled the sky and floated off. And the point of it was, you see yourself and you see what God has put on you to do, but you think it's this small little piece. But if we actually see what's going on around us, that we each are doing our part, then we can see the sky light up, and we see what a big accomplishment, how much is really going on. And so I think that night honestly challenged us as a group more than anything else, that we were to be the solution, not just in Chattanooga, but also in Ann Arbor, also in Michigan, and also in the entire world. And a lot of the kids really caught on to that, and that fire and that desire to be a change wherever God placed them. And one of the things that came out of it was a commitment from the youth that they want to be plugged into the community. They want to be serving here in Ann Arbor. And a few of the kids stepped up and said, we'll lead it. And we told them as a group, we're behind you, and we'll do whatever it takes, and we will support you as you figure out what God is laying on your heart to do in Ann Arbor and in Ypsilanti and in Saline and in the surrounding area for the gospel of Christ. And so my challenge to the church as a whole is just, what are we doing together to be in community and to be in motion and to be in Christ and to be the solution? Because these kids are ready to go, and they're ready to get those aspects and figure out what it means to live them out. And it's our goal to figure out how to do that too, and to figure out how to come behind them and everything that God's put on their heart and encourage that and grow that and just help that go forward. I think that's the only things